This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hello, everybody. It's Aaron Norris with the Norris Group, and today we are here with Rose Quint. She is the Assistant Vice President for Survey Research with the National Association of Home Builders. She holds a BS in Economics and International Business from Old Dominion University, as well as a master's degree in Economics from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. Her responsibilities over at NAHB include planning and conducting industry surveys, specifically in the areas of builder sentiment, remodeling, housing affordability, and AD&C financing issues, and she is also responsible for special research projects. And one of the reasons she's here today was I was at the International Builders Show last month in Las Vegas and got to see her present on the new report that they just released. So, Rose, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be on your show, Aaron. Thank you.
So just real quick, economics. Obviously, you've done a lot of studying in the economics field. Why did you choose the real estate industry and more specifically building?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that question before. It was when I came out of graduate school, jobs were plentiful, and this was the first job that came out in Washington, D.C., and I really wanted to come work in Washington, D.C. So I'm sorry to tell you, it didn't really start out as a love relationship, although it became one eventually. Okay.
So you're based out of Washington, D.C., one of the most inaffordable areas, so good for you.
That's right. I didn't know that at the time. Coming out of school, that was tough then, yes.
Well, and just so everybody knows, we were there in Las Vegas during the snow. I drove back into California, and there had to be several inches of snow all the way along the way. It was very interesting to see a good amount of snow falling on the Strip.
Well, even more interesting than that, Aaron, was the fact that it was colder where I was in Vegas and at home here in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Which almost never happens.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I saw you at the press conference, and you were releasing information from, I think, two different reports. One was the buyer trends from the builder perspective, talking about what the builders are building in 2019 and the features that will be included. And then there was a really great report that you just released in book format that talks about what the buyers want and more specifically what they're willing to pay for. I like that description on your website. So let's I guess get into, from the builder perspective, the characteristics of the new homes. Why do you think the builders are avoiding, at least here in California, and I can't speak to it nationwide, why are builders avoiding more smaller, affordable homes? Why are we getting away from McMansions? Are we sort of going to start steering small?
I think that's an unfair characterization, Aaron. I think builders would like to build more affordable housing if they could manage the costs. Builders are having a really, really hard time managing their costs in order to come in at lower price points. We have seen trends over the last 3 years that point the picture towards a picture of them trying to do that. But here are the three major problems they're having. Number one, the regulations. So we have estimated here at the National Association of Home Builders that regulations imposed at all different levels of government, federal, state, and local, cost about 25% of the price of the home. Wow. So right off the bat, 25% of the price of the home that you pay on average in this country just goes to pay for regulations. And then there's also the problem with chronic labor shortages. Over 80% of builders told us in a survey recently that they can't find enough framing crews or carpenters to build their homes. And what does that cause? That leads them to raise the wages they have to pay, and therefore they have to increase the home prices at which they sell those homes. Mm-hmm. And then problem number three is the expensive lots, scarce and expensive lots. Over 65% of builders are saying in surveys that we do that the supply of developed lots in their areas is low to very low.
Yeah.
So they're trying to manage all of this cost to respond to the affordability crisis that we have in the country, but they're having a really hard time with all the input costs.
We interviewed the California Builders Industry Association probably last August, and we had a very honest conversation about how some states are better than others. So California being one that it's very onerous on the regulation side. And the question was asked of the CEO, we were just asking him about the process in California versus other state. And I think he said, let's put it this way. In Florida, when I want to build a home, I have to have the conversation with my team of what's the economy going to look like in a year. In California, the conversation is what is the economy going to look like in 15 years? So it's very frustrating. And I'm just watching this from, a real estate investor perspective. Most of our crowd are doing rehabs or they're doing remodeling. But just because politically we're involved, it's frustrating to watch politicians have the conversation about affordable housing, but they're not addressing the core issues with greasing the wheel to make that happen faster, and that they're part of the problem. So I don't know how that gets solved.
And that is one of the things that NAHB works really hard here at the federal level, and then also helping the local associations to try to straighten out that process and those regulations, because that is, as I just said, 25% of the price of the home. And so if we could just bring that down to half of that number, we would be doing a lot to lower house prices.
Agreed. All right. Well, let's start digging in some numbers. I know we don't have a ton of time today, so let's talk from the builder perspective, maybe the size of home. So it seems like it may be going down. Is that a function in your data just because more condos are being built, or do you see single family residences, even houses, the square footage is going down?
We see both trends happening. We see more townhouses being built, and we also see the size of the detached single-family homes also coming down over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
So what you have to remember, if you put things in perspective, long-term historical perspective, what happened is the recession took place, and then by 2010 we hit a low in terms of the size of homes built in this country, and then for the following 6 years, roughly between 2010 and 2015, we had a very clear upward trend in terms of the size of the homes that we were building, the share of those homes that had these many characteristics like a garage for 3 or more cars, or 4 or more bedrooms, or 3 or more full bathrooms. So all of those things increased over that period of time, roughly 2010 to 2015. And we have to keep in mind as to why that happened. It wasn't that all of a sudden people really turned toward the McMansions or toward bigger and bigger homes. It was really a function of who was left playing the game of buying a home in those years. Remember, after the recession, underwriting became really tight. First-time home buyers retreated. Down payments became very large. So the profile of the people buying homes during those years changed. It was mostly people with very high incomes and previous homeowners with very good credit scores. So builders were catering to the people that were out there buying homes, which was not a typical mix, given what was going on in the country financially.
And I wanted to ask, from the demographic perspective as well, millennials seem to be waiting a little bit longer, and I've seen some articles suggest that millennials are going into their first home-time buyer experience wanting newer and sort of skipping that, I don't know, stereotypical first-time buyer inventory, if you will, existing inventory, and going straight to new. Is that something you're seeing?
I don't have any data to back up with any evidence that statement, but I would say most millennials, we do have preferences for millennials that they want to buy a home and they want to buy it in the suburbs. We know that from their preferences data that we collect. But in terms of what they're actually buying, I would say most of them are probably not going to be buying new homes because there's that much price premium between a new home and an existing home. And remember, typically millennials are buying their homes for their first time. They don't have equity yet built in a previous home to help them with the down payment.
Okay. Well, myth busted. Sometimes you just never know. People throwing out stats, and that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, we know that they want to buy a single-family detached home in the suburbs. We know that from their preferences. We don't have any data to support the fact that they would much more prefer to buy a new home than an existing home.
Okay. Seniors, while we're on the subject of demographics, is their tastes in what they'd like to purchase changing?
55 plus home buyers. Well, interestingly, their preferences are almost identical to the preferences of the average home buyer. I analyzed the data specifically for another press conference that I did. I don't know if you were there for that one, where I only looked at the 55 plus population. And when you looked at the most wanted features for the overall average home buyer and compared that to the 55, which we call the boomer home buyer, they were identical with one exception. the 55 plus group added a full bathroom on the main level to that top tier of most wanted features, and which did not appear among all home buyers as in general.
Interesting.
So it goes to tell you that, and then I looked at that over my generations, and certainly the older the buyer, the more essential that a full bath on the main level becomes.
Got it. Gives them a little bit more flexibility. So if they're not able to get into a single story, they are at least have a full bathroom on the main floor.
That's right.
Understood. Okay. I was interesting to see the homes with 4 bedrooms. So back in 2000, 36% of new homes being built had 4 bedrooms, and it peaked around 2015 at 47%, and now we're around 45%. Can you attribute anything to why we're building houses with more bedrooms?
Well, the trend really took off between 2010 and 2015, as I explained a little while ago.
Yep.
Those were the years after the recession, right, when underwriting became really tight, and builders really had to shift their production to the people that were purchasing homes during those years, and those were typically trade-up buyers, people buying their second, third, fourth homes who had equity in their homes, and therefore that segment of the market typically buys homes that are that size.
Okay.
So it wasn't a shift in preferences overall; it was a shift in who was buying homes during those years.
Okay.
And so that's what led it to be 47% by the year 2015. Now builders are now trying to downsize, and we have data from 2016, 17, and 18 that tells us that builders are really trying to downsize the average house that they're building in order to come in at lower price points. They're struggling, as I said a minute ago, with the costs and with the problems with labor and materials and regulations in trying to bring that down and still keep the price at an affordable level.
Understood. And I'm looking at right now the list from your presentation of the most likely features that are going to be typical in a 2019 new home. And this is from a builder, and it's on a rating from 1 not being at all likely to 5, the builder being very likely to include this in. And is this their base model?
So yes, so we ask every year, we sort of have a historical comparison going back a number of years. We ask builders at the end of every year, how likely are you to include the following features in the typical home that you build this year? Not in your super high-end home that you built, but in the typical home that you built this year.
Okay.
Typical for each builder means a different thing. So we just leave it at that, at the typical home that you built in 2019. And what we found is that the 3 that are most likely to appear in the typical home near you this year are a laundry room, low windows, and a walk-in closet in the master bedroom. The majority of builders rated that a 4 or a 5 on that scale from 1 to 5. 5 being very likely that I will put it in the typical home I built this year.
Okay. And then some of the ones after that, no surprise. So the great open concept isn't going anywhere. The programmable.
Yes, some of these have been around for a while and they're not going anywhere. We've got that great room, which includes the kitchen, the family, and the living room all in one open space. They want to help buyers with energy savings, so they're going to include a programmable thermostat, and they're going to include Energy Star appliances and Energy Star windows.
Yeah, half of the top
lighting.
10. Yeah, half of the top 10 had some kind of energy efficiency angle to it. And what's interesting, we'll skip ahead just a second. You had a really interesting stat from the What Home Buyers Really Want report that you put out. And you talk about sustainability and that the buyers don't want to pay extra for it.
That's a finding that when I present it to builders and remodelers around the country, they always laugh because they know it's true. They clap and they laugh and they all nod and say, yes, finally numbers agree with what I think.
Right.
Because we asked home buyers in that same report, What Home Buyers Really Want, we asked them if they were concerned about the impact that building their home will have on the environment. And what we found is that a very tiny percentage, 14%, said, yep, I'm concerned and I want my home to be environmentally friendly, but I'm not, and I will pay for it. But I will pay more for that. Another 18% said, I'm not concerned about any relationship between building my house and the environment. So that's 2 tiny minorities. And then the largest share, 68%, was in this group that said, Yes, I'm concerned and I want an environment-friendly home, but just don't ask me to pay more for it because I won't do that.
That made me laugh when you presented that. I was surprised that the number was that high. So
Yes, it's 68%. But Aaron, I think this is where what's important to take away from this finding is that so at a very idealistic and utopian way, at a very high level sense, they're not willing to just pay for the concept of helping the environment in an idealistic way. However, when you rephrase the question and you say, well, okay, forget about the environment and helping and building a home that helps to save the environment. Forget about that. But how about a home that will save you $1,000 a year in utility costs? Will you pay for that? And we get completely different answers when we ask it that way in terms of dollars and cents. A majority of our buyers are willing to pay $1,000 to $10,000 or more than $10,000 for a home that will save them that much money.
yeah, that's interesting. It's just all about the phrasing of that. And I know part of it, looking at appraisals, it's just been really hard to sort of create a concrete way that the appraisers can point to those annual savings and somehow build that into the appraisal, an actual number, because it's really a function of the market, buy, sell. What is the buyer willing to pay extra for? And they're telling us in your survey, yeah, I want it, but I don't want to pay for it. So they might not want a line item in the appraisal either.
Yes, and what I tell builders when I speak to builders around the country is if you're going to include these energy saving features in your homes, don't just say, oh, my home will help to save the environment. You have to put it in terms of dollars and cents. And
Dollars
say,
and
okay,
cents.
if you buy my home, which has X, Y, and Z features, it will translate into 1,000 or however much money in savings every year. That will turn them hearts, but just saving the environment will probably not turn any hearts.
And for remodelers and flippers who are rehabbing out there, I think this list is really helpful to see sort of what you're up against. So goes the new building industry, so goes us in some specific ways, except we're dealing with existing inventory. But I think part of the conversation, especially when it comes to technology, is how far do you go? For me and my remodels, I sort of feel like it's a VHS versus beta conversation. It makes me uncomfortable, especially with all the security concerns right now. Being at the Consumer Electronics Show the month before, it was very interesting. There was only one German company that led with the conversation around security first. When everyone else was a lot more about the innovation. So I'm certainly not going to be installing anything with cameras in any of my rentals. Maybe on the envelope of the property, I would consider, if in specific markets, a security camera. I don't know. It's just I was glad to see that some of that stuff didn't make it into this builder list. It was more the function of, low E windows, lighting, infrastructure stuff that's not necessarily smart tech. It could be, but doesn't look like it made the top 10.
It did not, but let's look now. If you just focus on technology, because that was a separate part of the research, you do know what we did find out is that when it comes to technology, they want smart technology to help them feel safe at home. That's the number one reason why buyers would be interested in technology, according to our findings. So it's not to have a smart refrigerator or a smart oven that will turn on by itself or tell you whether you have milk or not. All those choices came down towards the bottom of their preferences. What they ranked highest were choices that deal with safety. So security cameras and a wireless home security system and a video doorbell. Even though they don't crack the top 10, they are, among technology features, they are the most important for home buyers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I talked to the KB Homes team while we were there at the Builder Show, and I asked them if they were making a commitment to one smart technology over the other, and they've decided to lean towards Google. And I guess this is worth mentioning. There's the hardware conversation, and then there's the software conversation. So the artificial intelligence, the voice bot, Alexa versus, the Google Home Assistant. And then I found it really interesting that Amazon has really decided to split the hardware conversation and push it over into the Ring brand, and they're really letting the Alexa voice be its own thing and allow a lot of other hardware manufacturers to roll it out as part of their product. So I think that's really smart because the hardware versus software.
Absolutely. I was really surprised to see how many appliances at the Builder Show, at the exhibits, how many appliances included Alexa as part of the hardware.
Yeah.
You don't need a separate little piece of, clunky tool outside of on your counter to have Alexa. It could be part of your refrigerator or your microwave. I mean, incredible.
Yeah, and I just can't imagine like some of these. Sometimes I just want a light switch to be a light switch. Like, why overcomplicate it? I can see the vision of the future. Bluetooth technology. I'm walking up to the home and the lighting, changes, and maybe my smart detector watch senses that I'm stressed or maybe feeling a little extra sassy, so it starts lavender
So it only
spray.
turns on the lights halfway, not full way, because you're feeling tense.
It is going to be interesting to see the different level of demographics and the consumers who decide to adopt this. I was one of the first ones to buy the Philips LED bulbs at the Apple store. I used it once, and then it stayed warm white ever since. So for the last 4 years. So it's just going to be interesting to see. I'm really glad that I got to attend CES and then come to the builder show, because CES is all about the consumer and tech, and then to see what the builders are actually doing with it was really fun. I was interested to see some Kohler, I think, had the most magnificent booth, and they had LED lights in shower heads. I thought that was interesting.
Yes. Well, they always outdo themselves every year.
Yeah, obviously, the salespeople talking about bidets. Are bidets really making a comeback? I don't know.
They really put in a lot of work into their exhibit. It's fabulous. Yes,
they really did. So the top 10 that sort of didn't make it, was there anything on your list of features that the new home builder is not going to? The dual toilets is something that has completely baffled me as to why that's even necessary. But
it's in every. I don't know if you visit the New American Home every year. Every year we build something called the New American Home during the International Builder Show, and it's sort of a showpiece for every new technology and material and system that can go into new homes, and so it's really something to see, and it's open to the public during the week of IBS. I see it there every year for the past, I don't know how many years, 10 years. I've seen dual toilets in the master bath. Yes, but it's definitely not something that most home buyers want. We ask them, because as builders, you have to understand what people want to buy, but you also need to understand, and it's critical that you really understand what they don't want, because more than likely they're not going to pay for things that they are telling us they do not want. And so on that list, the number one item is an elevator. Over 60% of buyers said, no, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying a house that has an elevator in it. Other features include what we just talked about, dual toilets in a master bath. Most don't want that. They don't want wine cellars or living in a community that has a daycare center. Not appealing to home buyers. And also very interesting, among all the 25 or so green features that we included in the survey, the one green feature that over 50% of buyers reject and would not buy a home if it was included is a roof that is covered with plants, either partially or completely covered with plants. So I told builders just the other day, you probably want to make that an option and not include it in your typical home, because most buyers are not willing to pay for that.
I haven't seen any builders out here doing that, so I guess it's not a California thing. So
Yes. Also, laminate in the kitchen is not very popular with home buyers. Two-story places, not very popular with home buyers because they're hard to keep cool or warm. Cork flooring also, not surprisingly, is not something very high on the wish list.
That was so specific. I kept seeing cork come up. I'm like, oh wow, did it ever fully make it into popularity? But I guess it must have. But I don't know.
Well, at some point, sometimes these trends begin to emerge somewhere in the market, and we start tracking them because we don't know if they're going to pick up and become something important. But cork has remained something buyers really don't want, and therefore builders are not including their typical homes.
Yeah, I really, that report is so valuable. It talks about 77% of all the people that you're surveying, they're wanting single-family detached. So that's the vast majority of buyers. 64% in the suburbs. So we can't be ruling out this boomer generation wanting to be closer to city environments. So it seems like rural. I guess I was surprised that rural came in at 24%. That seems rather high to me.
It did seem high. It's been consistently about that number over the 20-some years that we've been doing the survey. So, and you look at the country, and there are 300 and some metropolitan areas. But other than that, this country is, in terms of just plain square footage, it's mostly rural.
Yeah, you had a really great chart that was breaking down central city, suburbs, and rural. And what was surprising is that seniors, so the 55 plus, 12% wanted to live in a rural environment, 85% wanted to live in the burbs. And for millennials, 26% of them wanted to live in a rural environment, and only 51% wanted to live in the suburbs. So, of course, there's no surprise, 23% of millennials were attracted more to central city living. But I thought the rural piece was pretty interesting. I did not expect that.
You didn't. Well, another interesting fact that comes out of this research is that, as you said, 23% of millennials told us they would like to buy that home in the downtown area. Now, that 23% has been, is twice as much as any of the other generations, by the way. So 11% for Gen Xers, 8% for Boomers, and 3% for seniors. So fewer than half of the share of millennials that want to live in the downtown for the other three generations. But when you look across history, across the last, 15 years, you do see an increase in the share of millennials that want to buy in the downtown, from low single digits to the current 23%. But I also told builders at the Builder Show that they had to interpret that result very carefully, because it's still a minority number. It's not a majority of millennials that want to live in the downtown area. It's still mostly, you can say that a majority of them still want to live in the suburbs, and that's, again, where they will look for that home.
Well, and we know downtown environments are not going to be very affordable.
Exactly.
A little more complicated. Well,
we know that they want to buy a single-family detached home, and so that's even more unaffordable inside the city, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we are winding down, and the report on the buyers is very extensive by demographics, and I think it's so valuable for rehabbers looking to what is most attractive, from cabinet color to features inside the property. If they're interested in purchasing the report, where would they find it?
So they go to NAHB's bookstore, which is www.builderbooks.com, and just type in what home buyers really want, and it should pop right up.
Perfect. Well, Rose, thank you so much for your time. This was very helpful, and we're going to have to do this at least once a year to get the latest scoop on what we should be paying attention to.
I'm here to help anytime.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.